You're between two dumbbells. I'm your host, Skip Hill, and I'm bringing over 40 years of bodybuilding experience to the table, including over 24 years of online coaching. I'm joined today by my co-host, Dr. Marv, aka the Educated Meathead. For each show, we posit a thought about a training exercise or training methodology, and then we deep dive into the minutia. We might argue and debate, or we might agree and tell each other how smart we both are. But at the end of the discussion, we both decide if we smash or pass the topic of the day. Of course, we'll also be doing another segment of Intimate Time with Skip and Dr. Marv, and then we'll finish, as always, with a few listener questions, which are typically, though not always, related to a past show. Remember, every time you comment on the YouTube comment section, you'll be included in a drawing at the end of each month to receive a $150 shopping spree from EliteFTS.com. And you'll receive Dr. Marv's online bodybuilding anatomy course. The more times you respond, the better your chances of winning. We'll post the winner for the month on my Intense Muscle Instagram account, and we'll also reach out to the winner via their YouTube account. Dr. Marv,
Yes,
I think you posit something today, do you not?
Yep. So slight tweak to what we normally do, but I still think it's going to be a great conversation.
Okay.
So I posit that, say it's the end of the day, and you look at the clock, and shit has gone sideways, and you only got 30 to 40 minutes that instead of your normal 2 hours for the gym. I posit you still go to the gym because you still could get a wicked workout in 30 to 40 minutes. You're just going to have to modify.
Horrible idea. Blasphemous.
Correct.
No.
Yeah.
Depending on who you ask, I suppose.
Yep. So I've got strong opinions about it, but since I did the posit, usually the other person leads the convo. So why don't you take it and then I'll share, because I've got strategies specifically for exercise pairings or what you need to do or what you need to not do.
Fair enough.
I figure we'll just go down each rabbit hole.
Well, I'm down with OCD.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not down with OPP. My wife's not here. Look, I don't train. I'm just being honest. I am black and white enough, or so much so that, look, I either have the time to train the way that I need to, or I just don't train. And I think in part, it's probably because my brain goes back to, how many times have I trained chest in 41 years? In the big picture, waiting another 12 hours doesn't matter a whole lot to me. And there's also there's other points in there too, like if I'm rushing, am I going to injure myself? And there may not even be a relationship. I could just injure myself and then I'm going to blame it on myself for racing, not doing something right, and wonder, had I just held off, if I would be okay. So I tend to err on the side of caution these days. I don't rush things. I don't want to rush a work. It's part of the reason that I train in a 24/7 key fob gym, because one of the worst things to me that can take the enjoyment out of a workout is racing the clock. I just despise it.
I know a thing or two about training, but I built a reputation in the bodybuilding industry for removing skin. If you have too much skin, call me. Remember, skin is overrated.
So, you got people on both sides. That's why I do think it's a great topic. It may not necessarily apply to me, but I've got feedback on it. I've got my opinions on it. And I think for some people, look, I raised 4 kids. There was a time where I had a regular job and I started my business, and there were times where I just had no choice. I had to race the clock. Empty nested now. I'm 55. I got plenty of time, if I'm being honest. I can schedule other things around because of flexibility and stuff like that. But not everybody can do that, and I couldn't do that in my younger years either. So it applies pretty much to everybody at some point. I'm very animated today. Have you noticed?
Yes.
It's just
Extra monster? Extra monster?
I don't know. I think it's the carbs.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
on fire
Meat
over here.
Your
Oh
meat
my
is going
goodness.
crazy.
Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yes. My eyes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dr. Marv. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
Performance chiropractic and sports medicine in the Houston Bay Area, telemedicine and nutrition coaching all over Texas. And if you're not in Texas, don't worry. You still do consults through the educatedmeathead.com, where you also find workout programs, seminar recordings, and online courses.
in a perfect world, we all have 1 to 2 hours to train, but that's not realistic for everybody or our entire life. So I think we have
Right.
periods of short term. I still say it's better to do something than nothing at all. I know a follow-up listener question, we will talk about how long it takes before you lose gain. So we'll follow up on that a little bit later.
Gains with a Z and a
Correct,
hashtag.
of course. I
Right,
mean,
okay.
duh. I mean,
Okay. Chris will get that up.
do we spell it any other way?
Chris covers everything. Chris
Yeah,
has everything
correct.
covered. He hasn't even
Yep.
seen it yet and it's covered.
Yes. But I think you've got a couple things to keep in mind. One, you're obviously not going to do as many exercises, period,
Mhm.
because each exercise requires you to warm up, get set up. So say you're used to doing 4 movements for chest, you might be doing 1 to 2. So let me outline what I think the options are, and then we could tackle them one at a time.
That sounds
One
good.
is, yes, just simplifying it. You're going to do more sets of fewer movements. So try and keep your same structure. Just do your big meat and potato movements. The other one is then doing, intensifiers. Like I'm a big fan of cluster sets. One of my favorite 2 exercise combos to destroy your quads that I actually put together when I only had 45 minutes to train legs was BFR leg extensions. The second you've already warmed up on the extension and the pendulum or whatever machine you want, BFR leg extensions, walk over, take the cuffs off, do 1 all-out myo rep set on a pendulum. If you have time to do a loaded stretch, that's 3 movements. You're done in 10 minutes of work time, and you are smoked because you're waddling over to the pendulum machine because your quads are so full of blood. That drops my pendulum squat top set from 3.5 to 4 plates down to 2 to 2.5. You do 1 all-out myo rep cluster set from Borgay Fagerly, and your quads are smoked, especially if you haven't done that before, because they are so full of blood. And then you're going to do Dante's loaded stretch. I promise your quads got a pretty damn good stimulus. So stuff like that makes a lot of sense. Or you code totally audible. And especially if you know you're going to be limited on time for an extended period of time, you just pick global movements that are going to hit your entire body more or less, because you're not necessarily going to grow, but you want to maintain. So what do I mean by that? So I have 3 examples of 3 movements that over the course of a week, this is all you have time to do. We're just trying to maintain, right? You might grow, most likely not, but maintenance, this is consistency like we talked about. We
Yeah,
need
but you've
to
got
not take 5
intensity
steps
there.
back. Correct.
Why would there not be?
Yeah, I mean, because then some people will say you need enough volume. I am making this number up. I feel like it takes maybe 40% of the volume required to grow to maintain muscle. And that is a number that I've just made up over
Sure,
years,
arbitrary
right?
to make a point.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, and if you've never done BFR or cluster sets with what I just mentioned, you're going to get smoked. But if you want to totally change it, I have 3 different exercise pairings, and I think they make sense. So day 1, you would do a Zercher squat, which no bodybuilders do, because think about how much core activation you're getting. And you could do this superset or tricep, then go into like a dip. I like Vince Gironda style dips, and then do a row, maybe a chest supported row if your low back's getting beat up from the Zerchers. But you get 3 to 6, 7, 8 working rounds of that. You've hit your whole body head to toe. That's day 1.
Now, before we move on,
Mhm.
can you contrast a regular dip to the Vince Gironda dip?
Yeah.
For those who don't know.
Correct. Yep. So that'll be on screen now. Vince Gironda, we've talked about it a couple of times. I think it would be great to do a deep dive into him
I
because he
agree
was
with
so
you.
far ahead of his
100%.
time. I think his dip is so much better for chest recruitment. Your triceps are still getting hit. I always just got such a better pump and better chest gains with a Z from the Vince Gironda style versus a traditional style. So as you can see, elbows are wide, your body's almost in a piked position. So you're getting some more core activation, and biomechanically, it is just blasting those lower pec fibers. I think, and then also I'm biased because while I could dip, those days are long over because of my shoulder and my elbow. I could strap 75 to 100 pounds to my waist and still bust out reps. For some reason, just dips, I was way stronger than any sort of traditional pressing.
And this is why I asked the question. You'll see now my version with the hammer strength dip machine that I do to contrast the Gironda dip and the regular dip. And I love them. They're great. I think they hit my triceps harder than the way that people normally do them and the way that I normally did them on the hammer strength. I think when people see this version, they'll be like, oh, I didn't think of that. I'm going to give that a shot. Now, my version isn't as heavy, but it hits, in my opinion, the outer head so much harder. And here's a funny little note. Not a ha-ha funny, but like a WTF funny. As I have aged, it's like I have lost size in the outer head of my tricep. I have gained it in my medial head and in my long head, of course, which is good. It's a fair trade. Yet at the same time, sometimes I look at them and I go, I had better outer tricep development when I was younger, but I think what I had was no medial head and no long head development. So it just looked like I had better outer tricep development when I was younger. So I've been trying to hit, which is funny because good luck just hitting, you know, I say just hitting. You can favor it, you know, with close grips and things like that. And I do think this, and then I'll leave this topic alone so I don't go to rabbit hole any deeper. I do think the change, especially in my training, and I think in the vast majority of people's training and tricep training over the last, let's say 10 years, has been more neutral grip dumbbell extensions. And I was one of the, I don't want to say the first, I didn't pioneer it, but I was into that movement before I introduced that movement to a lot of clients and a lot of people on intense muscle. So I think that neutral grip might take away from the outer head a little bit, if I'm being honest. And it kind of helped to pull us away as an industry or a bodybuilding industry from things. It maybe not help to pull us away, but the timing was the same, that we kind of got away from the close grip benches for triceps and things like that. It was all kind of happening at the same time. And I think that could play into it, but I'm not going to go down that route. I'll leave that for tricep training, the topic of triceps training.
No, that's fair. Yeah. Yeah. But you could see what I'm going for, right?
Sure.
Big global movements, hitting as much muscle mass as possible. So that would
Same
be day
time.
one. Yep.
Efficiency.
Day two, you could do a lunge, your favorite, do a walking lunge.
Yep.
Then you could do some sort of overhead press. And standing barbell military presses aren't really done in bodybuilding, but think about your entire body has to work. Or if you have the shoulder mobility, refer back to episode 1 and episode 2, and also give us kudos for how much better we are than those first 2 episodes.
That's right. That too.
But behind the neck press would get a lot more side delt because yes, you're not going to be doing isolation stuff if you have 30 to 40 minutes. You're just not, right? If you could sneak that in at home later, spectacular. But when you're there, big global movements, and then you could, again, do some sort of row. I don't care if it's seated, chest supported, bent over, right? Usually you could probably do a lunge, an overhead press, and a bent over row, and your back would be okay, but everybody's different. That's day 2. And then day 3, I love my RDLs. You and I differ a little bit on that. But again, just global movement, do an RDL, do a low incline dumbbell press, and then some sort of vertical pulling movement, whatever you want. But again, you could simplify it to 3 main movements where I'm already getting a ton of core. You're already getting your arms involved one way or another. Yeah, you might be lacking a little bit of side delt if you can't do it behind the neck press. But you could, I mean, you're telling me if you push really hard, doing them tricep style, getting 5 to 6 rounds after your warm up, that's not a solid workout.
Right.
And that's just doing straight sets. And then, or you do what I said before, your intensifiers, right? You're trying to make it as brutal as possible. I love cluster sets. I prefer cluster sets to straight sets. I'm a scoreboard guy, like we've talked about multiple times. So that makes sense to me. And
is that even when you have the time?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm so scoreboard numbers driven. I'm uber competitive and it's a way to get it out. I'm personally not a fan of drop sets, which we will talk about in a future episode. But again, this could be a time where your final working set of that day, just do a brutal drop set on whatever movement you're doing, right? Like 30 to 40 minutes, you're going to spend 5 to 8 minutes warming up, because you and I would both agree, I will cut my workout short in order to not sacrifice the warm up because I'm so beat up. And if you want to do this long term, so I still would say you're still spending 5 minutes warm up. So you have 35 to 25 minutes move through your warm-up sets fairly quickly, but still do warm-up sets. So
Yes.
that way you're left with anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes of work time. And if you're set up right, you're doing different muscle groups, right? So you're essentially tri-setting. So from one to the other, like you're going to be smoked. Also, think about all the cardio gains you're going to get as well.
Fair enough. I don't like to mix the two, but I do see that it's a benefit. And of course, the blood flow. I mean, you're going to come away, if you have to do this, let's say you have not done this and you haven't rushed workouts or you haven't done this type of a cluster set or rush workouts before, you're going to come away from it with pumps and going, I have time today. I kind of like that feeling. Like I was pretty blown last time, and you may start to venture over into the Marv side of things. I'm not going to do, look, you have your set way of, you like to challenge the numbers. I have those set ways too, which isn't good because in set ways, there's arguably complacency sometimes, or that staying in the box. So it's good that it's not only good to get out of the box, but sometimes it's good to be forced out of it because you otherwise wouldn't go out of that box. And that's where once you get out there, you go, oh, I didn't think about this. This actually works out pretty well. I want to go back to two things real quick and touch on them to get your opinions. Number one, this is during the 3-day exercise selection we're talking about. Number one, I want to add that even though I've given my opinion on RDLs in the past, the opinion is still there, but it's slightly different. As I'm getting leaner and I'm approaching this show, I got to tell you, the RDLs might be contributing to some pretty good hamstring detail that I didn't see until I was lean. I'm getting into this lean stage now at my weight. I hit about I'm in the 206s right now at about 6 weeks out. Once I get into that 205 mark, I haven't been this lean in 6-7 years. So I'm already starting to see some detail that I've not seen in years. And one of those things, my hamstrings, when I kick one hamstring back from the other side, there's a lot of detail there that was not there when I was this lean before. I was just as lean, but there's a little bit different development through the hamstring now that I did not have before. And that's not going to be from seated leg curls. And it's not going to be from lying leg curls. It arguably could be a little bit from lying leg curls because I did come back to them and I've been giving them a little more focus. But I'm telling you, matter of factly, based on where those improvements are on the hamstring, it's RDL. And I kind of laughed when I saw it. I go, oh, I'm going to have to be transparent about this. This is going to be painful. Not painful, but you know what I mean? It was kind of like okay. The other thing was, why has the overhead standing press been kind of relegated to antiquity? I don't know why. And I'm going to even add this. I even like, better than the standing overhead press is the standing push press. Because I'm a big fan of the lockout. And the further you get that bar away from your shoulders, the more, especially when you're narrow shouldered, the more anterior delt there is, instead of, not relying, but a little bit of that upper pec help, if you will, out of the bottom. So you're dry, a little bit of leg drive out of the bottom. And then obviously, once you lose that leg drive out of the hole, then it's that heavier weight with a little bit of momentum on the front delt. Blow your delts up and blow your rear delts up because they have to stabilize. It's big. It's a really, really in my opinion, very underrated movement. Not just the push press, but the standing overhead press as well. And I understand stability. You're big on stability. So if you're seated, you're probably going to be able to move more weight that way. But boy, that standing overhead press is, I think, underrated. And do them with dumbbells, even less stability. It's a killer on the ego because those dumbbells aren't going to be very heavy.
That is the true definition of total body strength. That's what used to be back in the day. How much can you standing overhead press? And then it switched to bench. And I'm like, why? Like that's no, like total body strength is how much can you press overhead while standing. Yeah, just with my shoulder issues and my wrist issues, I had to get rid of it. But I used to do a lot of standing overhead presses. John Meadows had a great tip. Now, your local gym owner might not be thrilled, but I did it for a while. If you're having, front of the shoulder pain, and this was my trainer days, not my chiropractor days, so I didn't know what I knew now. He would, stand right next to the squat rack and actually scrape and pressing the barbell against the squat rack. And that little friction also helped create stability in the shoulder. That took away a lot of pain. Now, how many gym owners are going to be thrilled you're scraping a barbell up and down their squat rig? To be determined. But he did that. He also did that with the racked deads, kind of for like the lower lat. Like John did a lot of like scraping the bar against the cage, which when I was in my garage, studio, who cares? But in a corporate gym, they might not be thrilled.
We did that in the 80s because we didn't have a Smith machine.
Ah, yeah.
At the Y Center.
Mhm.
So we always, that rack was all the way down to the metal. And of course, nobody cared because it was the Y Center. But we always laughed and said, get a Smith machine, because until you do, we had rubbed that thing smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you think again, though, but like your entire body's been hit with those 3 exercises. Are you getting calves? A little bit. The push pressure help a little bit of calf.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're going to trade some stuff. But if life on life's terms is happening, don't just say I can't do anything. Just do what you can.
Fair enough. Like I said, I can see both sides, just because in my situation, I'm just relating it to my situation, I can come back tomorrow, where other people may not be able to do that. You may not have, maybe a situation for me, I can come back tomorrow. Maybe a situation for someone else that they have to train that way for 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks,
exactly,
maybe months. Yeah, there are a lot of variables that will sometimes cause us to have to make these changes, and that's why I think it's a great topic. I'm not going to say I smash it yet, but But then, like you already said, though, like necessity creates a lot of ingenuity. Like take what you've learned and roll with it, just like an injury does. If you don't learn something from that injury, I would question whether you're I don't know, terribly resourceful and you're paying attention to what's going on. There's a lot to be learned in situations like this. And again, comes back to being forced out of the box, whether it's an injury, whether it's variables that you don't have control over in your life, that you have to make these changes. You got to come away with something. So it's all about adaptation. We got to adapt. We got to be able to adapt if we're going to continue to do what we want to do. So,
and what's the best workout stimulus? The one you're currently not doing.
Right.
So this is going to be such a change of pace. But every time I've had to help a client through this, their cardio conditioning is night and day when they go back to normal workouts. They're like, dude, my battery and my reserves are so much more because I actually could rest now 1 to 2 minutes between sets versus 30 to 45 seconds. And then, oh God, here's another big compound movement. Now, with that said, you still, goes without saying, but I'm going to say it just in case, you're still warming up. Like I said, your form is still machine-like, picture perfect, robot reps, whatever word you want to use, right? You're still doing that. You're not just going to go, because I only have 20 minutes to train, I'm going to put more on the bar than what I could comfortably control.
Right. I'm going to go heavier today. Yeah.
So I messed myself up Christmas Eve day. So even remember, I'm an educated meathead. The meathead still wins out time every once in a while, and I pay for it. So we got to the gym. They're like, we're closing in 25 minutes. I was like, oh my God. Didn't know that. So I did a quick
Jesus
warm-up.
won't understand if you're not big on his birthday.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yep. So I'd already committed. I was excited, blah, blah, blah. So I did a quick warm up, and then I didn't do enough warm up sets. And in 18 minutes, I did 8 sets to failure on the hack squat and 7 sets to failure on the seated leg curl.
Oh, geez.
But I didn't warm up properly for the hack, and I pissed my spondy off. And that's what set me back 4 months at the beginning of this year. Yep. So I know better, but I still got caught up. I did a 5-minute warm up, and I didn't do enough warm up sets. And I was literally I mean, I puked 3 times. It was awesome. I hadn't puked in a long time. So I was like, oh, okay. I used to like doing this. That's weird because this is terrible. There goes all my intra, all $32 worth. I'm kidding, but intra is expensive when you do it right. And I paid for it. So like, yeah, by the time we got to the store to pick up card games for Christmas Eve family night, I was like, oh no, I pissed my back off. So don't do what I did.
41 years of training,
Yep.
Dr. Marv, and I'm going to be, again, apparently transparency is the theme of the day for me.
Yeah.
I have never, no, I threw up once in 41 years. One time, and it wasn't from training legs. You know, it was from
Too thick of an intra?
too damn transparent today. There was a time back in my prime. No, there was a time shortly after I was married, and I was training with a legend, like a legit legend, Mark Hoffman in Michigan. And I'd only been with my wife for a couple years. We were in this really rundown, trashy, it's called Reps with a Z. Everything's with a Z if you're hardcore. And, you know, we had AC/DC, Thunderstruck, all that type of thing. And I would go in and I would still have a rub of Copenhagen in. And I had bent over. Yeah, you know where I'm going here. It's not, it wasn't from the nicotine. I had the rub of Copenhagen in, long cut. I bend over to do rear dumbbell laterals. And as I breathe in, because my mouth was so dry, a chunk of somehow, you know, I was a veteran tobacco chewer, went back and lodged in the back of my throat and made me throw up my eggs as I'm bent over all over the floor in projectile vomit mode. And I literally am laughing, and that's making puke come out of my nose. I puked from choking on a chewing tobacco ball when I was doing rear laterals. My point is I've never thrown up training legs. And it's funny because I always defend it. And I always say, it's totally cool and hardcore. Don't get me wrong. I have a lot of respect for anybody who trains hard enough to throw up from training legs. Okay. But I also think that going to that level is absolutely unnecessary because it's to a level, in my opinion, that is unproductive. It's counterproductive. Now, it can be argued that at least they know that line. That you can point at me and go, you know what? You're a pussy because you haven't been to that line. And that's true. I have not stepped over that line. So I don't train legs as hard as a lot of people. If you have thrown up from training legs, you have trained legs harder than I have. That's difficult to admit because I think I train pretty hard, but I've never once thrown up in 41 years.
Or you could argue your conditioning is so superior that you could train harder than everybody and still not puke.
Yeah, I think most would agree that that's a justification. Even myself, you know what I mean. Part of me would like to say,
I'm trying to throw you a lifesaver.
Well, and part of me would like to say that I have been there, just to go, oh, okay, that's the level that I, for whatever reason, couldn't get to. Now, I have been to the point where I thought I was going to pass out during a set. I mean, I've been to some wicked places, but I've never thrown up.
It's 0 thumbs up. Do not recommend.
No,
but
no.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this, because I want to go down this path. I touched on it earlier, and I understand your reasoning. You know, the 40% arbitrary number to make your point about maintaining. But I still say that if you were going to go into a phase where you had a limited amount of time, and obviously it depends on the amount of time. Okay, do you have 45 minutes? Do you have 30 minutes? Is it consistent from workout to workout? Like if you just have 35 minutes all the time, I think you could structure a workout that is intense enough. And I agree with you with the warm-ups. I don't care how much time you have. This is my perspective on it. If you can't warm up, if you feel that your warm-up is rushed or different than what it normally is, then I don't think you should train. I want to put that black and white parameter out there only because you know what it takes, or everybody should, to be warm and in a position to where you can train intensely, because you're going to arguably be training more intensely with a shorter amount of time than you would if you had enough time. So I think it's equally as important, if not more so. But I'm going to say that if you have that consistent amount of time, I think you can structure a workout that you can grow from if the intensity and the efficiency is there. One more thing I want to add that I think is important too is this. When we feel like we're rushed for time, we tend to we need to remind ourselves not to rush through the sets. You can rush through the resting in between sets, but you don't want ballistic movements. And it's hard to counter that because you're like, I'm in a hurry. I always consider it, it's a cue of mine. It's like a verbal cue. I consider my intensity in the gym, and I say it to myself sometimes, controlled chaos. I don't train with emotion. A lot of people do. They get angry. They think about things that are, that have traumatized them. I mean, I used to train in high school with a guy and he would come up with some weird, and I'm like, bro, I don't want to know that much about you. Like, just use it. Okay. But I never trained with emotion. I trained with intensity, but with purpose. So I consider it controlled chaos. It's chaotic. It's intense, but it's still calculated and controlled versus entirely emotional. And I think there's a big, big difference between the two because you have control over one. And I think you're less likely to cause injury or go to a place that you otherwise should not go based on signs of telling you not to go there. Like if something hurts, a lot of people be like, oh, that hurt. Okay. But you know what? I'm good, and keep going. If something hurts, I'm wrecking that bitch. I'm getting out of there and I'm going, okay. And I'm going to assess real quick. I might get right back in and everything will be fine. Maybe my knee wasn't tracking well for whatever reason. And then the next set, it's fine. But I think that we need to be careful when we're rushed to make sure that during the sets, we're not rushed. In between, yes. I think there is room for growth there, though, in progress if you structure them efficiently and optimally.
Yeah, that's another reason why I like my metronome, because you can't cheat, you can't rush. But I think it's also a good exercise for people to cut out the bullshit fluff that's not serving you other than you're checking a box. So you might be shocked, man, I grew with more intensity and less volume compared to my normal 25, 30 sets of body part. And usually what happens, right? Everything goes in phases. It's high intensity, low volume. Then all of a sudden high volume, lower intensity comes and everybody grows like a weed. And then Mr. Olympia changes and we go back to high intensity. So this flip-flopping, that's, again, it's a new stimulus. You could probably make great gains. And yeah, I agree. I probably oversold you're just trying to maintain, because you could probably gain, but bare minimum maintain.
Yeah. And going in with that infrequent, okay, I just have X amount of time. I can appreciate the perspective. I'm going in here to maintain, to get the workout done, to get something out of it. I get it. I totally get it. If I'm asking too many questions, tell me to leave you alone so that, I'll leave you alone so you can continue down, the path of the topic.
You're good.
But I have this question for you about the metronome. I've wanted to ask you this before, and I understand it's preference. It's not something that I want to do. Quite frankly, I think it would take the fun out of it. But I understand that you're a black and white numbers guy, and what that does, correct me if I'm wrong, but it helps to keep variables constant. That I do like. So that's I'm on the right track, right? Okay. Do you always use that, or is it something that you use either intermittently, or is it something that you just use the vast majority of the time? I just want to hear your take on it.
When I am log booking every single work set, which is 80% of the year. I know it's sadistic or masochistic or whatever the correct word is. You could correct me which one I'm supposed to use.
Masochistic,
Yep. But I like it, especially because, and I started doing it during my DC days. So you're doing a metronome on a Widowmaker. Oh, good God. I can't do it now. Mentally, I'm destroyed from it, like we talked about. But those were some of my most fondest memories is
it's funny
leg day
because
with a metronome.
one of the things that I have, and I love DC training, but one of my arguments against it is there's always a way to change the rep tempo, or, you leave a little bit of a half inch of range of motion out. Like there are these things you can change to get 1 or 2 extra reps, and then we count it as growth, when in reality, we've kind of cut a little corner here, we've cut a little corner here, and it adds up. Now, I will say this, you can't keep cutting corners and then keep progressing. So you might be able to cut a corner one workout, and then it catches up with you the next workout, because then you have that very same variable that you cut corners the week before, you're not able to gain from cutting that corner, that particular week. But you just eliminated with your variable 2 things that I would argue against it, because you can't change. I do like that part of it. I just can't help but feel, and this is just me personally, man, that's and I'm a black and white kind of guy, but that just wipes that out right away. I'm like, I don't know if I can be that specific.
Very few training partners like the metronome.
Okay.
Very few.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For that. And then I would so then you're going to have discipline.
Oh, geez.
Of noting, like in your logbook, like during my DC days, 9 reps good plus 2 partials. Like note that, right? And then it helps to have a good training partner who calls you on your BS and isn't just going to say, good, like that's, so you're going to have discipline. And I think that's, I can't speak for Dante, but he marketed it as, this is not for beginners. And I think that's a huge thing, is yes, the intensity, but 2, do you have the reality check of knowing, man, those last 2 reps, I totally shortchanged just to beat a number, right? And that's the evolution. Everybody that I'm aware of who did DC for an extended period of time, the evolution is DC was great. It put on a lot of size. 1, I can't do that anymore. And now I'm transitioning to as much muscle recruitment and working the target muscle versus just beating the logbook by all costs. Because ideally, you're still beating the logbook, but muscle recruitment's priority 1, right? And then that's totally different. Like how many great bodybuilders, like Nate Spear talked about, man, I got super strong and then I lowered everything by 40%, getting as much muscle activation as possible. My goal is to get back up to those numbers with activation. So the perfect example is the leg press. Are you just pressing the sled, or are you mimicking a leg extension with every action, flexing your quad as humanly as possible, as humanly hard, or whatever the words I'm trying to use, because I can't talk today for some reason. Like, you get what I'm saying, right? There is a difference of just moving the sled versus contracting that quad, still flexing the quad on the negative, pausing in the bottom. Like, that's totally different.
There's another guy, goes by the name of Nick Walker, who does something.
He's a
very
great
similar.
example of that.
And I think arguably, if I was Nick or I was Nate and I had strength like that, it probably would be a little easier, or I might be a little more motivated to slow things down, versus the rest of us mere mortals, who we do like to put up the bigger numbers when we can. Now, I'm not a big fan of putting up numbers that I don't feel are fluid. I call them green room reps. And what that references is, if anybody's listening and they have a surfer background, the green room is when you hit the perfect wave and then there's no noise and you're just in this place where everything is just about as perfect as it can be. Everything just feels right and everything fits together. And I typically find that in a set when I'm at that 95% of the weight that I can move. I can move it and it'll look great from a mechanic standpoint. It's even, it'll look fluid, but it doesn't feel even. And sometimes it'll be the same weight that I used for the first set, but I use it for the second set. And that little bit of fatigue will make the second set essentially the green room versus the first, where it feels like, click, pop, when it's, versus this. And it's just like it's just moving itself. Like, it's so fluid. It's just so perfect. And it's funny because as long as I've been training, I don't have bad workouts. I know this sounds bad. Like, oh yeah, sure. But I think once you get to kind of an experience level where you're able to read whether you should be in the gym that day or not, your workouts are typically good. They might not be the most awesome workout but they're not bad. They're not like, oh, I didn't, I hear sometimes clients say, yeah, I haven't had a pump in 6 months. What? Like you what? You don't have a pump? Yeah, I don't get a pump in my back. Like, that's weird to me. Like, you're clearly doing something wrong. Like something's not right here. That's just not even possible. Like that shouldn't happen. So then I question the connection and really feeling and being connected with that muscle, because you're just missing something. There's something between your brain and the connection in that muscle that is just not right, because those muscles are working under resistance. There's really no way around. You could be massively depleted and you're going to get a pump. You might not hold it for very long. It might not be a very extreme pump. There has to be blood flow there because there's contraction going on and you're using glycogen as a fuel source. So there's really no way around it. Anyway, my point just being that those workouts aren't bad, but then there's good workouts versus completely optimal like you walk out and you go, man, I killed that. Like I just killed that. And I think that's the difference between being experienced or seasoned or a veteran of training and really knowing how to read. I went in last Saturday. I double cardio every day. When it gets late into the week, I get very depleted. I'm 6 weeks out. And I went to bed Friday night, Saturday morning. I was laying there for about 3 hours. Got up, couldn't sleep. Still had double cardio on the last workout of the week. And it was horrible. The entire day just sucked. My life sucked, but I knew I had to get it done. I got to the gym and I literally pretended on the way to the gym, because I was going at the same time I always do. And I started training my brain, just basically saying, this is any other day. It's just any other day. You're not tired. You don't have double cardio. You're not depleted. Go in, side delts, arms. Don't hit it easy. Hit it like you would normally hit it, unless there are signs that say you shouldn't. I had one of the best shoulder and arm workouts I've had in weeks. It was great. So some of that too is mindset. And that again is what can separate someone who is not just a beginner, but an intermediate versus someone who understands that you do have more control from a mindset standpoint than you think you do. But you have to be seasoned enough to be able to essentially control it or trick yourself into believing and understanding, yeah, this can be done. So then I still had cardio when I got home, and it felt like later that night, it felt like I had cinder blocks on, but boy, did I sleep well that next night.
That's the hardest part, is especially what I see people get wrong with progressive overload. Their first work set doesn't go as they want and they mentally collapse.
Sure.
They go, F it, this is the work. I'm like, okay, then switch it up. That's the hardest thing to do. Then maybe you don't look at your logbook and you just go for muscle engagement or switch things up, or you're allowed to say, hey, this isn't, I did my warm up. I tried going in with a good mindset. Sometimes you just don't have it.
Yeah. Sometimes it will not be
always there. I tell clients, at least do your warm up, at least do a few warm up sets. Try and do one working set. If it still feels awful or your body's giving you warning signs, do cardio, light cardio, don't do HIIT cardio. Walk on a treadmill, do Paul Dillette cardio, 2 miles an hour, right? And then just try and get some restoration in and then call it a day. But at least go and see, because that's a common theme. Tired, stressed out, didn't sleep, blah, blah, blah.
This isn't going right. Yeah.
Yep. It's one of the best workouts. Now, there is no excuse though for not getting a pump. If you're not pumped, that means you're not hydrating well. And again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I will choose being well hydrated over well fed every single day of the week and twice on Sundays when it comes to training.
Sure. Yep, I agree with you. In fact, I'd go so far as to say there really is no good reason to not be hydrated anyway. It's so simple. Come on now, people.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. I completely agree. I think there's a lot of good points there. Are we transition? Do you want to add information? We can add, information if I don't want to cut you off. But if we're to the point,
I think we've pretty much summed it all up, right?
Yeah.
Like, is it ideal? No, but you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And you'll learn some stuff, and maybe you'll be like, I like doing a cluster set, or
you should learn. Doesn't mean you will.
Correct. Or this stupid pairing of blood flow restriction into a quad compound movement immediately when my quads are still full of blood.
Yeah.
It's terrible, but man, biggest quad pump of your life. Like, there's things you'll be able to learn and take away from it. It's hopefully not forever, but even if it is, you could still make progress. So yeah, I'll actually side more with you than my original statement.
Fair enough. I'm going to pass for me because I don't have to deal with it. And if I did, it would be literally for a day. So I'm going to pass on it for me, but I just think that it's the concept and the topic is worthy of a smash because I don't have to go back too many years to be raising 4 kids and have a much more chaotic life than I do now, and know that there were times where that still needed to be done. And I recognize, because of clients and friends, there are plenty of people who will be on occasion or sometimes for 2, 3, 4 months where that has to happen or nothing is going to happen. So in a situation like that, it is an absolute smash. But I will still add that I think if it's structured correctly and planned well, I do think you can progress. I think you agree as well. I think there are factors in there that dictate whether you will be able to progress or if it's something that you want to kind of approach it as a maintaining, a mode of maintenance. So I think we're on the same page there, but I'm going to pass for me, but I'm going to smash the topic itself because I think it has merit.
Yeah. And no big surprise, I'm smashing because this is my life right now. And I had neglected training and I said, screw it. Even if it's only 35, 40 minutes, I'm going to do something. So,
and
totally
let me add this for the listeners. And that is this, even if you're maintaining, let's just say you're not even maintaining 100%. You're like, I just don't know if I want, there is a therapeutic component in training that when you do something consistently and you're familiar with it, and that's part of what you do, not doing it, you miss out on that you time and that kind of respite or reprieve from all the stress that you're dealing with outside of the gym anyway. So at least when you're in there, you might think, oh, it's still on my brain. It's not on your brain like it is when you're driving. It's not on your brain when you're at home and you're dealing with the stress with your wife or your partner or your kids or whatever, money problems or job problems or whatever the issue is. You'll get at least a little bit of a break in the gym. And I have always said that there is a hugely underrated therapeutic component to training for people who that is their norm.
Yeah. Word. And there's stuff behind the scenes that nobody knows. Skip knows. And I was like, I finally started training again. And you're like, about freaking time. And my mood is 100 times better.
Yeah. Right? And it's hard to make that transition sometimes. You just get in that rut and you're like, you know what? F this, F that. Like, I'm just going to sit here.
Yep.
But most of us, we get to the point where we go, well, this is kind of sad.
Enough.
Yeah.
Correct.
And, thankfully, I think a lot of us, not everybody, but I know I'm fortunate. I've been married for 33 years. My wife's awesome. There was a time a couple of years ago where I was really throwing a pity party and I had some legit stuff. She's usually 100% of the time, 99% of the time, she's incredibly supportive and that's, but she came out of the room and I was talking and she cut me off, which never happened. Not because she's weak. The girl's, she's strong as hell. There's no way I'd be married to someone who was weak or submissive. It can't happen. And it's why it's lasted 33 years and will last forever. But she literally cut me off and said, matter of factly, not shitty or just, how long are you going to throw this poor you party? And I was like, oh, bitch, what? Like, I didn't say it, but in my brain, I was like, oh, bitch, no, you didn't. And I literally looked at her and I couldn't even like I knew it. She was right. Like, God, this is really, really pathetic. but it took her saying that to tell me what I already knew to actually hear it and go, damn, okay. All right. When my initial reaction was like, oh no, you didn't.
Yep.
You did not just say that to me. Truth, in your face. And sometimes that's just the case. We may not need our partner to say it. We already know it, but it takes that minute to pull yourself up and go, okay, I got to do something.
Yep. Because the only thing I get when I sit on the pity pot for an extended period of time is a ring around my ass. And it's, I was enough is enough was last week. I said enough's enough. I'm getting back. I'm only going to be able to go, tomorrow I'm only going to have an hour total, including driving to the gym from my office, warming up, driving home. But that's still an hour that is non-negotiable. So I'll maybe get 40 minutes in the gym. That's fine. It's better than nothing.
The sweet music of love, we can no longer...
Let's transition to intimate time. I got some questions for you, Dr. Marv.
All right.
Not related to bodybuilding, 10 of them. And I have changed the way I've come up with these questions. I don't want to get deep. I don't want you to have to sit there and go, oh man, I don't know. You know what I mean? I want them to be more questions that are a little bit more obvious and not as deep, I guess.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Number 1, if you just want to chill, relax, and do nothing, what do you look forward to doing?
Right now it's driving my new car. Normally it's watching them. I'm a big movie guy. So I love watching movies. They're just a huge part of my life. So either driving my car or watching a good movie on the couch or in the theaters, but those are few and far between.
Yeah. The theater time, we're dating ourselves with that one, are we not? Yeah. Number 2,
I will say real quickly, The Accountant 2 was excellent. I've seen it twice in theaters.
It is good.
So we're seeing that. Mission Impossible, incredibly disappointed. And it broke my heart.
Oh.
Yeah. So
I don't think I've seen it. And I'm a big Tom Cruise fan. But.
Yeah.
Number 2, when was the last time you were randomly hit on?
Last weekend. No, this weekend at the beach.
Really? Were you with
we went to she was going to the restroom, so a group of people came up to me. I was like, oh, thank you. This is her chair. So thank you. Yeah.
Was it a woman?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. The only reason I ask is apparently I am very popular with gay men.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'll take a compliment anywhere I can get it. So if you're a gay guy and you tell me I got a great ass,
for it.
I'm like, I appreciate that. I don't care where the compliment comes from.
Correct.
Shit.
Yep. Equal opportunity here.
Yeah.
Equal opportunity.
I've got options, right? You never know.
Yep.
You never know. I'm not interested, but I appreciate that. I'm still flattered.
Correct.
I appreciate it. All right. Number 3, what is the most annoying trait that you think a person can have? Well, that one backfired on me. I thought it'd be easy.
No, I'm trying to word it politely.
Oh, fair enough.
Unrelenting narcissism.
Okay.
That drives me up the wall.
I tell you, I'm a bigger fan of using the word solipsistic, only because narcissism, it's essentially the same thing. But narcissism gets this, like, it's overused. So people kind of tend to tune it out. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I've switched it to you're either a solipsist or you're solipsistic, but it's the same thing. I'm with you there. I agree with you. Number 4, name one thing you wore as a teenager that you thought was cool, but it was actually lame as hell. And not now, but it was lame then, and you didn't know it.
Oh, man. As a kid.
Yeah, or as a teenager. Now, if you did not conform or try to...
Oh, I tried to way too
Okay,
hard.
I know I did too, but some people did.
I did like the whole Dickie short thing.
Okay.
I'm a white boy. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's probably it, yeah.
Number 5, do you believe in paranormal activity?
Yes, and I try to ignore it because that shit freaks me out.
Oh, you do? Okay. All right.
Like,
I'm always intrigued by that.
yeah,
I never know who does and
I
who
believe
doesn't.
there's another dimension that we don't have access to. I don't watch shows. I don't think, but there's something going on. Like,
Okay.
I just go, it would be really, this is my personal opinion. It would be
Mhm.
really like, it would just be like overly confident and naive to think we're the only thing there.
Yeah, I get you. Okay. I
You
figured
know what
that's
I'm
where you were
saying?
going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Number 6, name one conspiracy theory that you believe or is at least plausible.
Right now, they're trying to split the general population with squirrels so we don't pay attention to what's really happening with the people at power.
Fair enough. All right. Number 7, if you were allowed to time travel for one day, what year, decade, or century would you visit and why?
The 70s, because I'm a 70s kid at heart. Even though I was born in the 80s, I used
Really?
to wear 70s clothes. I love everything 70s. I love. I would have loved to have gone and spend some time back in that decade.
Okay.
I would have burned my brain out though, so it's probably a good thing I didn't live, because I'm
Right.
very like the hippie values align with me a lot more than like the straight edge values back then. But yeah, I would love to spend some time in the 70s.
Okay. Number 8, you're forced to sing karaoke. What song do you sing?
I used to have a good voice. I used to do solos in the choir in church. We're talking
no kidding.
hundreds of solos, and then my voice changed and it went to shit. Yeah, I was very involved in choir and ensemble
Did
and
not know
singing in
that.
front of thousands of people.
Ah.
But now
See,
I
I
can't
learned
sing for
something
hell.
today. I
Yep,
learned something
correct.
about you.
Yep. But if I had to, Bing Crosby's White Christmas.
Very cool. All right. Here's the reason I asked that.
Mhm.
I think it would be
I'm not going to
super.
do it though. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
no,
Don't
fair
worry.
enough. And
folks.
I don't sing either. But yeah, I think it would be super cool of my wife and I to sing what's the Johnny Cash song, Jackson?
Oh yeah,
Johnny
yeah,
and
yeah.
June.
Yeah,
I just think it'd
that'd
be
be
cool.
awesome.
I love that old style. So, and I think if to mimic it would be a lot of fun. I think it would work, but I can't bring myself. I don't dance and I don't sing. I'll sing in the truck. My kids
Okay.
know I sing,
Yeah,
but that's about it. Anyway, number 8, you are. It's not number 8. It's number 9. Name a phobia you have. Fear of 10 questions. During
Yeah,
interview.
right. I don't.
And if you don't have one,
Yeah, I don't like scary movie jumpy stuff. So I
that's
don't
funny.
really know if
Neither
that's
do
a phobia, but like I'm comfortable with my man card. I don't do horror movies. I don't do scary jumpy movies. Like no, hell no. Like it's
My
not a true
kids
phobia.
and
but,
my
yeah.
wife pick on me for that
Okay.
because I jump. I don't
Yeah.
like it.
I don't
can
enjoy
handle
it at all.
No.
Oh, I do not like
and
the
they
jumpy.
wait for it and they will laugh so
Yep.
hard. And
Mhm.
and then of course I get mad, like a dipshit.
Correct.
I get all mad.
Yep.
Anyway, number 10, last question.
Okay.
The one movie that you saw as a child and it scared the shit out of you.
Jurassic Park, because I was not allowed to see PG-13 movies till I was 13, so I didn't have a break-in period. So the velociraptors in that kitchen kept me up for a week.
No kidding. Okay.
And now watching it, I'm like, that's the most unrealistic thing ever. But as a 13-year-old kid, he finally got to watch his first PG-13. Holy hell, I did not sleep for a week.
That's funny. Okay. Dinosaurs. Wow.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Mhm.
All right. That'll take us, we'll segue into, you have the questions, I think. Listener
Yep.
questions.
This is from, oh God, Devil 5HLY Grim 972. Is there any way to blend myofibrillar and sarcoplasmic training together to get the best of both worlds?
Okay. Well, you asked it, so I guess I'll go first. It wouldn't,
Mhm.
I guess it wouldn't work if you ask it and answer it first.
Mhm.
Um,
Because I could go over what everything is.
Okay. Because I'm going to say that, I mean, combining it into one set, well, we'll need to. Basically, the Cliff Notes version is and correct me if you see it differently than this, but sarcoplasmic hypertrophy is essentially, I consider it along the lines of, glycogen, insulin. You're maximizing the size of the cellular fluid in a sense, or the ability to maintain, fullness and size, versus myofibrillar hypertrophy, which is essentially technically building more or thicker muscle tissue. So what's funny is I understand why they separate them, but at the end of the day, a visual is a visual. So, but I can see how, there is clearly a difference, and it is related in part to training, because you can see a different look with, people who don't train as heavy. I don't think it's a conditioning issue. Let me rephrase that. A lot of people will mistake the difference as a conditioning issue. You see someone who's grainy and lean, they're like, oh, he, trains heavy and hard. That doesn't have anything to do. That has to do with collagen in the skin. It has to deal with leanness, a lot of other factors. But when someone trains heavy and they're big, there's really it's a pretty clear connection versus someone, and I think you can see this a lot with the sarcoplasmic part of it. If you get massive wicked pumps and you go from looking normal to looking like a freak, yeah, that's arguably far more sarcoplasmic type volumization than the guy who's just going to look like a freak anyway and walks around every day looking like he's full and he has a pump. There's a big difference there. So I don't think you can combine the two, and you're not going to be able to combine the two in the same set. You can combine the two in the same, essentially the same workout, but it's not just, I don't think it's just the training. I think it's how you approach your training. It's how you approach your, your nutrition. And there's a lot there to unravel. So I gave my kind of Cliff Notes version, response first. I'm going to hand it off to you and I'll see if I can piggyback off of what you're saying.
Yeah. So sarcoplasmic hypertrophy is what exactly you just said. It's increasing the volume of the sarcoplasm, which is everything that is non-contractile. So it's fluid, it's, glycogen storage, inflammation, enzymes, non-contractile proteins. Okay. And that's without a proportional increase in actual muscle tissue, which is actin and myosin filaments. So myofibrillar is actual protein tissue. Okay. It's the actual contractile elements, right, that create muscle, and that leads to greater fiber density and contractile strength. So typically we look at sarcoplasmic coming from the higher volume, so 12 plus reps, lower rest periods, more like California Pro pump style workouts from the 70s, with myofibrillar hypertrophy coming from more of the progressive so that's more, sarcoplasmic's more like metabolic stress based mechanisms of growth. Myofibrillar is more progressive overload, mechanical tension, right? So typically, bodybuilders kind of lean more towards sarcoplasmic, power lifters, Olympic lifters more towards myofibrillar.
Mm-hmm.
Now the outcomes are going to be different. Typically sarcoplasmic, if you want to simplify it as much as possible, if you're having sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, you're probably, the muscle is looking larger, but your strength isn't going up, versus myofibrillar, the muscle is looking larger and your strength is going up.
Okay. What
is interesting though is the duration of how long each hypertrophy thing lasts, how long it takes to build, and other outcomes. Do you want me to keep going? Or do you want to chime
Absolutely. No, I like where you're going.
Yep. So typically sarcoplasmic hypertrophy is the more moderate load, higher rep, shorter rest periods, right? That typically will stay around for 7 to 8 days. It looks at the research around the 8-day mark, you'll start to shrink a little bit. Significant reductions in size are around a 2 to 3 mark. And in a lot of cases, you're back to normal muscle size 4 to 8 weeks after stopping training. So typically you train and you pump up, that'll last 1 to 2 weeks unless you're training again.
Okay.
Yep. Now, what's interesting though is, and we still don't know what this means, so this is a theory. The main, I guess you would call it a con, but we're not 100% sure, is if you're doing a lot of this sarcoplasmic training So the pump style workouts, right? Not the mechanical tension, the reps in reserve, blah, 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 is you could actually have a relative reduction in contractile proteins. One study found up to 30 to 50% less actin and myosin relative to the starting points when you're only doing sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. So that could potentially lead to a decrease in mitochondrial density and oxidative capacity, which means muscular endurance and maybe metabolic health over time,
Wow.
because you're getting so much fluid. That
Mhm.
makes sense, right? These big 300-pound guys, they get winded going upstairs, right?
Yeah,
But like in the
yeah.
gym, they're an animal. So it's interesting. So that's like the con of sarcoplasmic, and you deflate. And we'll talk about that
Yeah.
more in a second. Myofibrillar is the Dorian, the DC style training, right? And I agree. There is a difference on stage with somebody who is heavy slag iron, like Dante likes to call it. And I'm not saying this is bad, but like I think of like Charles Glass with his weird pump style stuff, or who's the
Milos.
giant sets? Yeah, Milos. I don't know. I
Mhm.
drew. God, I am useless today.
I knew
The
where you were
Milos
going.
style
Yeah.
training, correct? Right. So like
Yeah.
those are those guys. So the negative side effect of myofibrillar is usually your injury risk goes up.
Yeah.
Because you're creating more tissue damage, you're more sore, there's risk of overtraining, the loads are heavier, blah, blah, blah. Now, timeline, myofibrillar, so actual protein tissue, takes significantly longer than sarcoplasmic. So we think about 6 to 10 weeks as it takes to actually grow tissue of actual muscle tissue, whereas sarcoplasmic might happen as little as 3 to 6 weeks, right? So that's a pretty big difference.
And I think arguably when you first start back, what are you going to see? Sarcoplasmic. Yeah, you're
100%.
going to start to fill out, and that's going to be the volumization right away. Yeah.
Correct. So to simplify it, if your muscles are getting bigger but your strength isn't going up, you're most likely getting sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. If you're getting increases in both muscle size and strength, you're probably getting actual contractile tissue. Now, why is there a lot of maybes? The only way to truly measure this is through muscle biopsies. And if I've never had one done, but I remember Dr. Scott talking about getting his quad biopsied, and he was destroyed.
Really?
They are ripping tissue out of you.
Oh, okay.
Like, yeah. So, and guess what? Imaging like MRI, ultrasound, CT, we can't distinguish between contractile and non-contractile tissue.
Oh.
So it's literally biopsies or nothing,
Okay.
right?
All right.
So that's why there's a lot of this ambiguity.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk about losing gains though,
Mhm.
because that's what people are worried about, losing gains with a Z. So we talked about how, and there's a lot of people misunderstand this. So I actually have a couple important physical traits that I want to hopefully put some people at ease, and then we'll talk about myofibrillar versus sarcoplasmic muscle loss. Say you go to zero training. This is a summary. You'll lose maximal speed in about 5 days. You'll lose strength endurance in about 15 days. Glycolytic endurance, which is more what we do in the gym, in 18 days. Maximal strength we'll start losing in 30 days. Aerobic endurance you'll start losing in 30 days. In terms of our physical appearance, why you deflate on vacation or time off, even if you are a myofibrillar style trainer, you're still going to have some sarcoplasmic most likely, is around the 7 days. Remember I said the research says sarcoplasmic hypertrophy maintains pretty well for 8 days and there's a sharp drop off. Around 7 days, you're not having the stimulus to super compensate with glycogen. So you're going to start just naturally holding around 20% less glycogen. And people always forget, glycogen is stored carbohydrate. The key word is hydrate. For every 1 unit of carbohydrate, or it would be glycogen would be the proper term that your body stores in muscle tissue, 3 units of water come with it. So not only do you have less glycogen, you have less inflammation from training, you're holding less water, blah, blah, blah. So that's why you deflate. But that is fluid in the muscle cell, not actual contractile tissue.
Right.
And then people make these. So whenever people say, oh, I put on 30 pounds of muscle in 4 weeks, it's all sarcoplasmic water. The best example, I cannot repeat it, but I normally don't call people out, but I am not a fan of that clown, Dr. Tony Huge. Like, I don't think anybody is. And he did these documentaries of, oh, look at this kid put on 32 pounds of muscle in 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And then he told that to Lee Priest. Just look up Lee Priest's answer. It was on a National Geographic show. I think it's called Trafficked. Just look up Lee Priest's answer. It was awesome. I can't repeat it because it is not PC or appropriate. But
Is
it
Lee
was the
ever
ultimate-
PC or
correct.
appropriate?
So
Yeah.
if you say Lee Priest, you probably can't quote it very often.
Right.
But
right.
it was the ultimate mic drop. So
Yeah.
that's where you deflate, but don't worry, it's mostly fluid. Now, what happens to actual contractile tissue? Because some really smart people, I'm not going to call names out, but I was listening to somebody who's, I think, incredibly intelligent. He even misunderstood this. He said, oh, in 2 to 3 days, you start losing tissue. That is true if the muscle is denervated, meaning you've lost nervous system input, like the nerve's been cut, or it's immobilized. So long as you're living day-to-day life, it's not going to be 2 to 3 days that you start losing actual contractile tissue, right? Day-to-day life is still enough of a stimulus. Plus, you still have muscle protein synthesis ramped up from previous training sessions, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
In the real world, it seems like the onset of myofibrillar muscle tissue loss, i.e. actual contractile tissue in the context of detraining, but still living your life, is probably 2 to 3 weeks, not 2 to 3 days. And that's what the current evidence points to.
Okay. All right.
So getting back to his question, can you do both in the same set? Probably not, but in the same workout, yes. That's
Right.
why I like how I stole this from Joe Bennett, so I always give people credit. Here's my meat and potatoes, progressive overload, mechanical tension. Here's my fun shit. Here's my finishers, my pump set. So then you're getting both in the same training stimulus.
Yep.
I think that's the best way to do it. Or you have Dr. Scott Stevenson's fortitude training, where he has muscle rounds and loading sets for your myofibrillar, and then he has your pump sets for your sarcoplasmic. Like, my only gripe with fortitude is, for me, with how beat up I am, his full body days take me 2.5 to 3 hours because it takes me so long to warm up. But the structure of it, of having mechanical tension, progressive overload, beat the logbook, and then your California Pro, have fun, go ham, get as much blood in, it's brilliant. I just take so damn long to warm up. That's on me. That's not on him. But I do think what looks better on stage, it's personal preference. I love the disgusting grainy hard muscle from heavy training versus the balloon stuff. Flex Wheeler's the best example. How many stories have you heard? I saw Flex Wheeler. He didn't look like much, and then he started pumping up, and I watched him put on 50 pounds on his frame.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think
And that's a very good
long
example
enough. Yeah.
of that type of physique. No question. And I think too, visually, when you see someone who is walking around, I think I touched on this earlier in my initial response, you see someone who's walking around, they just look jacked and pumped all the time. I'm gonna predict or assume that they are predominantly, that's a myofibrillar type of look. It's just more volumized. It's I don't know how to explain it, but it's the rest of us mere mortals. When we walk around, we don't walk around like we look in the gym when we have that, when we have that pump. So if you're in the gym and you look completely different, I know I do, I'll be honest, that is, I think, predominantly the sarcoplasmic type of situation or type of response. So, and here's the thing, at the end of the day, I don't know, does it really matter? It probably does, in the sense that one is true muscle tissue, pure muscle tissue. And I think you touched on this. Even if you're predominantly myofibrillarly, I'm trying to put it together here, predisposed or you have that advantage, you can still take oh man, I'm drawing the blank, but you can still take advantage of the fact that it's not like you don't want to focus on sarcoplasmic hypertrophy too, because there's still a benefit there for more volumization. So ideally, you never want to have just one. You don't want to focus on just one. And I would argue, do you really need to do it in the same workout? You could do it every other workout.
Correct.
Because you just pointed out the numbers, and that's not going, either one is not going to be lost within a week. So you could go every other week. You could focus on one style one week, and you could cycle it through and focus on the other one the next week. And it arguably could be more efficient that way, because it could be easier on your system, on your CNS over time. You could run a lower risk or potential for overtraining. There's a lot there. And again, a lot of this comes back to, I was getting questions. It happens a lot. I'm one of those guys who, if you message me or DM me, I'm probably going to answer your question. I may not do it in a terribly timely fashion, but if I have time, I'll respond. Sometimes I'll respond with an audio file, and you don't even, I've never spoken to you before, but I like to do that. I like to help if someone reaches out for my opinion. There's going to come a day where nobody will care about my opinion. And in the meantime, I do like to help if I have the time. But sometimes when I get these questions, I think to myself, you're ahead of yourself. You're boggling your mind, and you're creating chaos in your head when you need to be patient and just assess the feedback. You're asking me what you essentially already know, but you're kind of being impatient. And I don't want to pick on anybody, but there was something about skip loading that came up today that made me feel this way. He told me what he did. He told me about the skip load, and this is only Monday. And he skip loaded over the weekend, and he's trying to guess what's going to happen for the week. And I told him 3 different times, all you have to do is assess at the end of the week whether you have progressed or not, and adjust from there. But I had to say it 3 different times before I finally said, you're asking questions that the only thing I'm doing, you're asking me to assess the feedback when all you have to do is assess the feedback. There's nothing else to do. Like, I can't give you a black and white answer right now on Monday when you don't even know what that feedback is. So sometimes people are asking the questions that they want answers for, but you can't give that to them because you have to wait to see what the feedback is, when all they have to do is wait for the feedback and assess, and they won't even have to ask the question. So a lot of it, I think they want the answer, but the answer is there if they wait and they're patient and they're able to assess the feedback. If people could assess the feedback accurately, they wouldn't need to ask anybody any question. Now, I'm not saying don't reach out to me. I'm not saying that it bothers me. All I'm saying is I'm trying to be helpful by giving you the answer of, get to the point where you are patient enough to be able to assess and analyze the feedback, and there's your answer.
Yeah, I think we talked about it. When I got to my all-time best end of last year, 1 week was my metronome cluster set progressive overload. The next week was pump style sets, because I should be doing more pump style training, but it is nails on a chalkboard to me. So that was my happy medium of, I'm still doing the stuff that I enjoy, but I'm doing the stuff that I should be transitioning to. And I'm a small guy naturally. When I started training, I weighed all of 155 pounds at 22 years old. So it's not like I was 15 years old. I was pretty developed. And I'm not a pro bodybuilder, but I finally hit 247 with abs last year at the December, right? And that was my training. 1 week was the myofibrillar, 1 week was the sarcoplasmic. And I actually had fun with it, because even though I didn't enjoy the sarcoplasmic, I was like, yeah, but I'm doing something different. And guess what? Next week, I'm going to be so much stronger and my joints aren't going to hurt as bad. So I could go crazy. And then I just mess around trying to invent new movements and novel uses of machines, getting funky with it, like Dante and Dr.
Right.
Scott talk about. And it was a great happy medium to where, yeah, I don't work one-on-one. I have workout programs. I put a couple up and people are having the same results of like, holy shit, I'm growing, but my joints don't hurt. I don't have the burnout. I'm not having to deload as frequently, right? Because you can only do myofibrillar progressive overload so long until you deload. And if you're the person who goes, oh, I don't need to deload, either you're not training hard enough or you have no idea
Right.
how far behind you are. And again, fatigue is this big buzzword. Unless you are advanced, you've been training for 8 to 10 years. This is just an opinion. don't worry about fatigue. Right? I mean, obviously, like if you're not sleeping, you're burnt out, your joints are hurting, your strength's going down, yeah. But there's this obsession with it. And I'm like, the whole goal is to provide a stimulus that your body wasn't ready to meet. So it comes back bigger, faster, stronger.
Right.
Case closed.
Well, and sometimes people will make that adjustment after only a couple weeks because they're like, oh, my body can't handle it. Your body is still adapting. It's
Yep.
trying to adjust. So if you pull the plug too soon, you're
Mhm.
not going to adjust and you're going to go right back to what you were doing before.
Okay,
so at least
so-
give it time to see and assess, like we were just talking about, to be able to get that feedback to see if the body is in that mode of changing to be able to adjust and adapt and move forward. Takes a
So
minute. You got to be patient.
Yeah, tangent question. How long do you think somebody should do a specific training block for then? Like,
You know,
massive
everybody's a
cycles,
little bit
whatever
different. I'm going to
word,
give
yeah.
a minimum. How about that?
Yes,
I do
yeah, that's
not.
what I would like.
Yeah. I don't think you should make a change. I don't think you should. I think you should stick with what you're doing for a minimum of 6 weeks. And I know that some people will think, oh, that's a little short. But there are times where, okay, after 6 weeks, you should be able to have a pretty accurate read after 6 weeks. If your body is not beginning to adapt to something after 6 weeks, I would start to ask those questions. Doesn't necessarily mean that you need to change it, but you need to be asking the hard questions of, okay, should I be going? I think anything less than that, unless it's just completely over the top, like you have just gone into a cut phase and you cut 1,500 calories and you've doubled your volume and increased your frequency. If you're doing something crazy, that's completely different. If you're making normal changes to a training program, increasing or decreasing calories, 6 weeks is a pretty good amount of time, I think. You go longer than that or no?
Yeah, I prefer longer.
Okay. All right.
8 to 10 weeks minimum, and I'd rather a training cycle last 16 to 20 weeks. And
Well, even
then
8 to 10, I
change
mean,
it
that's
up.
only two
Yeah.
more.
Correct.
So, I mean,
Yeah, but
we're
like that-
kind
but
of in
that's-
the,
Correct. That's the bare minimum. I prefer somebody to run a training routine 2 rotations in a row and then switch. If you need a deload in the middle, that's fine. But
Okay.
the whole 6 week program to program hop, I'm like, you're just now starting to get into the groove of things and you're going to switch it up again.
yeah, but let me just be clear though. I'm not saying that after 6 weeks, you should be able to say, oh, definitively, this is successful or unsuccessful. What I'm saying is you should have a pretty good read at the 6 weeks.
Okay. I get what you're saying.
That's
Yeah,
more,
okay.
that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
definitively like, oh man, like I have to make a decision right now.
Yeah.
Just that feedback should be pretty good at that point to give you a good idea if you're trending in the direction that you're trying to head in.
Okay. I gotcha. Yeah. I could live with that.
I'm glad that you said that now because I otherwise I think if I didn't clarify,
Yeah.
that may have sent the wrong message. So I appreciate that.
But yeah.
Oh, good deal.
I think,
Good. I think we covered it quite
yeah.
well and more in depth. That's why I said I thought it would be a great topic too, but I think we covered it. We had the time and we were able to
Mhm.
kind of dig into it enough to be able to give a pretty in-depth response. And I like the information you came up with. Some of that I was unfamiliar, especially the time frame and that
Mhm.
sort of thing. That's it's always funny. How long have I been doing this? And I still say, look, and I've made the mistake in the past of saying, oh, you're going to hire the student or you're going to hire the teacher. You want to hire the person who's both, because there should be no teacher who is still not a student.
Correct.
And when
And-
I can pick up something from you, that's always a good feeling because it reminds me, and it should remind a lot of people who've been in their kind of field of we'll call it expertise, but what they are focusing. If you're not still picking up information and knowledge and learning things, you're probably going to want to step aside and let those people come up who are still willing to learn, because no one has learned everything and no one knows everything that's going on. So I like
Amen.
that.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Good stuff.
And I need to put the caveat, this is not studied in enhanced bodybuilders who are 50 pounds over their genetic limit.
Sure.
So take that with a grain of salt.
Mhm.
It has to be said. But you typically aren't losing as quickly as you would think.
Right.
Now, visually, yes, it could be, it could be 10, 15
Oh,
pounds.
even in our brains. We're on
Correct.
vacation for 3 days and we think we've
Yep.
lost half of our gains.
Yep. But then
It's-
that's when you bring your cheap BFR cuffs, shameless plug, hit my bio link for my Amazon list. You do BFR, then you go out to the beach in Cozumel and you're going to be all sorts of pumped with sarcoplasmic everything.
That's funny. I'm gonna go on record and say that I probably would have done that in my earlier years. I remember the first year I started training, I was heading into my 9th grade and I was so bothered that the gym was closed for maintenance 1 week before school started that I bought one of those crushers from a garage sale. Like really. I thought I was going to lose every gain I had. And then years later I laughed because if I go on vacation and I'm going to go to Bora Bora or I'm going to go, to Cozumel or something, I'm not working out. No, I've trained for 41 years. I know well enough that a week isn't going to matter. I'm going to have fun and I'm going to get so far away from bodybuilding that if you ask me if I'm a bodybuilder, I'm like, what's that? I just eat a lot.
Yeah.
That's all. I picked my parents really well and I just eat donuts and cookies. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yep.
Anyway, on that note, I'm going to take us out, Dr. Marv.
Sounds good.
We got to get to getting. This is Skip and Dr. Marv splitting. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell. It should sound a little something like this. And if you didn't like the show, just pretend you did. Like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell anyway. I want to hear your questions, feedback, and any ideas you have about future topics in the YouTube comment section. If your question or topic is chosen and used on the show, you'll go into a drawing and we'll randomly choose one winner at the end of each month who will receive a 5-pound bag of Team Skip protein from TrueNutrition.com. Be sure to use the TrueNutrition.com link in the closing credits to save 10% on not just Team Skip protein, but every supplement they sell. Not only do I use my Team Skip protein with my clients, but other top prep guys have their clients use my protein because it's that good. Dr. Marv, how can someone reach out to you if they have questions or if they want to work with you?
I'm most active on Instagram at dr.marvin.saysdc. My office is in the Houston Bay Area. I do telemedicine and nutrition coaching for all over Texas. If you're not in Texas, don't worry. I still got you. Go to theeducatedmeathead.com if you need help putting together your warm-up routine. That's going to take 5 to 8 minutes when time is short, or work on your posing. I don't do posing coaching, but giving you drills to do before you pose. We could do all that there. Workout programs, seminar recordings, online courses, all that jazz.
And if you have too much skin, I got you. Go to teamskip.com. You'll find all of my contact information, including Team Skip merch. Of course, you can follow me on Instagram at Intense Muscle as well. Keep in mind that this is a team of 3, not 2. Chris is the enigma behind the scenes, and he's responsible for visuals and graphics. And he also plays a huge role in the creative process. This project would not work without him. So from all 3 of us, it's been a business doing pleasure with you. Join us again next week for another episode of Between Two Dumbbells.
Dumbbells.
Loading team skip. Loading team skip.